meeting number 4 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, October 19, 2020, the committee is resuming its study of the implementation of the Mi'kmaq Treaty rights, fishing rights to support a moderate livelihood. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. I would like to start the meeting by providing you with some information following the motion that was adopted in the House on Wednesday, September 23rd, 2020. The committee, of course, is now sitting in a hybrid format, meaning that members can participate either in person or by video conference. Witnesses must appear by video conference. All members, regardless of their method of participation, will be counted for the purpose of the quorum. The committee's power to sit is, however, limited by the priority use of House resources, which is determined by the whips. All questions must be decided by a recorded vote unless the committee disposes of them with unanimous consent or on division. And finally, the committee may deliberate in camera, provided that it takes into account the potential risks to confidentiality inherent to such deliberations with remote participants. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. For those participating virtually, members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. Before speaking, click on the microphone icon to activate your own mic. When you are done speaking, please put your mic on mute to minimize any interference that might occur. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Should members need to request the floor outside of their designated time for questions, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. If a member wishes to intervene on a point of order that has been raised by another member, they should use the raised hand function. This will signal to the chair your interest to speak and create a speakers list. In order to do so, you should click on participants at the bottom of your screen. When the list pops up, you will see next to your name that you can click raised hand. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. Unless there are exceptional circumstances, the use of headsets with a boom microphone is mandatory for everyone participating remotely. Should any technical challenges arise, please advise the chair. Please note that we may need to suspend for a few minutes as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. For those participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the directives from the Board of Internal Economy regarding masking and health protocols. Should you wish to get my attention, signal me with a hand gesture or at an appropriate time, call out by my name. Should you wish to raise a point of order, wait for an appropriate time and indicate to me clearly that you wish to raise a point of order. With regard to the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. I would now like to welcome our witnesses in the first panel. We have, of course, Chief Paul J. Prosper, Buchan-Keg, Mi'kmaq Nation, Assembly of First Nations, Regional Chief, Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. We also have with us Chief Darcy Gray, Listowel, Mi'kmaq Government. We will now proceed with opening remarks from Chief Prosper first. I will remind the speakers that you have 5 minutes of opening remarks, and I have to be firm on the time frame because, of course, we're late starting and we want to make sure we get our questioning in as well to hear your important testimony. So, Chief Prosper, when you're ready, 5 minutes or less, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable committee members, I am honored to be here. I am here on behalf of the Assembly of First Nations, representing the region of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. I would like to begin by stating that it is beyond the scope and mandate of this committee to provide any definition to legal concepts such as what is a moderate livelihood or a livelihood fishery. To do so would mean to undermine the nation-to-nation negotiations currently undertaken between the Mi'kmaq and federal government. Rather, I believe the primary purpose of this hearing is to educate you, the leadership of this country, on some issues and perspectives that the Mi'kmaq are currently facing. To do so in 5 minutes or less will be a challenging task. To begin by way of background, we as Mi'kmaq have a long history within our traditional territory. We have our own creation story. We have legends which speak to a time when the ice started to walk on the land. Before the arrival of Europeans, we existed as independent nations, governed by our own customs, values, and traditions. As such, we have Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been recognized and affirmed by the highest law, the Constitution, and the highest court, the Supreme Court of Canada, in this country. A national chief once said that for a First Nation to gain recognition of rights, 3 aspects need to be employed: direct action, litigation, consultation, and negotiation. For each of these, different people step forward and take on a specific role and responsibility. Through many decades, the Mi'kmaq went through this cycle of direct action and litigation. It is within the last 2 decades that the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia have undertaken negotiations in a unified manner with the federal and provincial government. As Mi'kmaq, we have our warriors, those on the front lines that take matters into their own hands in the face of injustice. People like Gabriel Syliboy, James Matthew Simon, David Denny, John Paul, and Tom Syliboy, as well as Donald Marshall Jr. and many others. In order to create a law as Aboriginal people, we have to break a law that is unjust in the first instance. Litigation often places the application of Aboriginal and treaty law against provincial and federal law at the highest level, the Constitution of Canada. A bit about the political landscape. We have the salmon rates in Quebec in 81, Denny Paul and Syliboy charges. In 87, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal report on the wrongful conviction of Donald Marshall Jr. In 89, the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal in Denny Paul and Syliboy, following with Sparrow, AFS agreements, Donald Marshall being charged in 93, the Supreme Court of Canada decision and the reaction in Bird Church. And we have in 1999, in 2000, we have the Marshall agreements, also the Maiden Nova Scotia process in 2002, followed by rights reconciliation agreements in 2017. Important to this is the rule of law, which provides within the Constitution, Section 52, that the Constitution of Canada is the supreme law of Canada, and any law inconsistent with the provisions of the Constitution to the extent of the inconsistency is of no force or effect. All laws must trace their root back to the Constitution. To negotiate Aboriginal and treaty rights, government typically conducts their negotiations through a mandate from Canada. It was a rude awakening for me to realize that just because you have an Aboriginal and treaty right, it does not mean that the government will honor or uphold that right. In other words, there is no mechanism to force government to honor the laws of this land. Yet, you ask, how do I know this? I know this because of Buckingham and Bear River First Nations here in Nova Scotia have been waiting 30 years for a mandate from Sparrow, an Aboriginal right to fish, and 21 years for a mandate for Marshall for a livelihood fishery. What is endemic within the federal government to Sparrow, through Marshall, and still today is negotiation without recognition. So you might be thinking, how can this happen? Well, it's quite simple. You have a government official that says, we don't have a mandate to talk about your rights, but here is an agreement. There is simply no other option. And how does government achieve this? They go by band by band. Still worse are the supposed rights reconciliation agreements of 2017. These agreements provide money to First Nations to purchase access in the fishery under DFO rules. In return, First Nations have to agree to suspend the practice of their rights for 10 years. Negotiation without recognition or access without self-government is the status quo and default position of the federal government.
Okay, Mr. Chief Prospero, I have to tell you, your time has gone over, unfortunately. I would say if you do have your speaking notes, if you could send them in to the clerk, we will get them translated and distributed to members of the committee. We'll go on now to Chief Gray for 5 minutes or less, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. So Listuguj is a Mi'kmaq community in Gespegawagi, the 7th district of Mi'kma'ki. We are in essence the gateway to Mi'kma'ki, or using more familiar terms, we are located in Quebec across on the Baie des Chaleurs, immediately across from the Restigouche River of Campbellton, New Brunswick. Listuguj is party to the Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1760-61. We have a right to fish and sell fish to earn a moderate livelihood. The Supreme Court of Canada said in Marshall that Canada has the authority to regulate our fishery, but can only impose restrictions on our fishery if they can be justified for a substantive public purpose or minimally intrusive and follow meaningful consultation. If a restriction cannot be justified, then it is invalid. The general rule is we have the right to fish and sell fish any time of the year. Every fall for the past 20 years, Listuguj has conducted a fall fishery for lobster. The DFO issues Listuguj a license that restricts this fishery to food, social, and ceremonial purposes. The license prohibits us from selling the lobster we catch in the fall. The prohibition on the sale of lobster we catch in the fall serves no conservation purpose. The DFO permits us to fish, and we fish within the prescribed effort limits. Whether we eat the lobster or sell the lobster, the effect on the lobster stock is the same. The prohibition on the sale of lobster we catch in the fall has nothing to do with regional or economic fairness. These are lobster that we will be taking from the water one way or another, whether to eat or sell. If we sell them, that in no way diminishes any other stakeholders' access to the resource. We asked for years for the minister to issue us a license that would reflect our treaty right and allow us to sell lobster in the fall. The Fisheries Act and Aboriginal Communal Fishing Licenses regulations, as they are currently written, give the minister the power to do that. We have been negotiating and consulting with the DFO about this issue for years. Every fall, we are refused. Every fall, the minister insists on prohibiting us from exercising our treaty right. And we understand the need for a well-regulated fishery. We understand that with rights come responsibility. So, after several years of community consultation, we adopted our own law and fishing management plan to govern our lobster fishery. Our law and plan allow our people to sell their lobster, but ensure that fishing efforts remain sustainable. For the last 2 falls, we have conducted our own self-regulated fishery. Lobster stocks in our fishing area remain healthy. We have not seen violence like what is being witnessed in Nova Scotia. We see our lobster fishery as a self-determination success story. We tried to get here working with DFO. In the end, though, we got here in spite of the DFO. The DFO still stands in our way because the license we received for our fall fishery prohibits the sale of lobster. It is an offense under the Fisheries Act for anyone to buy our fall lobster. We have a treaty right to sell, but the DFO makes it illegal for anyone to buy. This is a significant challenge for us, and it is entirely of the DFO's making. This is not an issue of needing to define a moderate livelihood. It hurts me to say it, but Listuguj is a long way from achieving a moderate livelihood through our fishery. We have 33% unemployment. This fall, our lobster fishery lasted 2 weeks and employed 38 people, fishers, monitors, cooks, and more. We cooked 10,000 pounds of lobster and distributed them directly to community members, feeding approximately 1,500 community members, including 300 elders. I'm very proud of that, but it's hardly a moderate livelihood. This is really an issue about how we fish, not about how much we fish. The DFO insists on forcing Mi'kmaq Treaty fisheries into the mold that was developed for non-Indigenous commercial fisheries. We do not fit that mold. That mold was not made for us. The restrictions that mold imposes are not justifiable. We are more than capable of designing an approach to fisheries governance that does reflect our rights, values, and ambitions. But the DFO has not been willing to work with us. By failing to offer any reasonable accommodation to our treaty or of our treaty, the DFO provides no other alternative for us than to self-regulate. In a way, I'm thankful for it, It has made it obvious to our fishers and community members that we are capable of assuming this responsibility. Self-determination and self-government are the future of our fishery. The only reason that the DFO gives us for not issuing us licenses that reflect our treaty right is that it would make the fishery difficult for them to manage. I think the exact opposite is true. If we had licenses that respected our treaty rights, laws, and fishing plans, then we could work collaboratively with the DFO on the water to make sure our fisheries are safe and sustainable. As it is, the DFO forces the Mi'kmaq to fish in a legal gray area. It makes us angry. It makes non-Indigenous fishers angry. That is when management problems really start. For years,
Thank you,
okay.
Chief Gray. The time is up, gone a little bit over. I know you have submitted your speaking notes. It is being translated and will be distributed to all
Okay.
members of the committee. So now we'll go to questioning, and it's to the Conservative side. Mr. Bragdon first. I understand you're sharing your time with Mr. Arnold. So will I leave that to you to decide when the switch will take?
That would be great, Mr. Chair. And if you happen to notice, I'm getting close to the 3-minute mark. If you want to wave at me, I'll make sure I get to Mr. Arnold in proper time. But
Okay.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And also thank you to both Chief Prosper and Chief Gray for being here and taking the time and sharing testimony with us. We appreciate your time before the committee today. Thank you. And obviously, all Canadians are concerned about what has been happening in Nova Scotia as of late, and I want to state very clearly that any acts of violence are always condemned in situations like this, and there's no place for that. And the Indigenous people certainly have a right to fish, and that is very well established as well. And appreciate you coming before the committee. We do have some questions, and obviously, in regards to the situation, we feel we've arrived at this place in Nova Scotia, and particularly, in large part, we feel because there has not been a proactive approach on the part of the government to address the underlying issues that need to be addressed at this time. And we see now that they have put in place a special representative, as my understanding has been appointed to try and mediate or help facilitate a discussion in regards to the situation in Nova Scotia. So on Friday, Chief Mike Sack of the Spiknetik First Nation raised concerns over the appointment of the special representative to mediate the conversation between Indigenous and commercial fish harvesters in southwestern Nova Scotia. He called the appointment alarming and is quoted saying he is worried about the appointee not having the capacity to be a neutral third party to conduct these discussions. Do you echo these concerns? And that can be to both chiefs. So I can start with Chief Prosper and Chief Gray.
I guess I'm not completely privy to the specific mandate provided to the special representative. There are ongoing discussions that are taking place between the Mi'kmaq and the federal government. And basically, we're looking forward to a breakthrough in those discussions with respect to the special representative. I'm sure the federal government has confidence in that individual to conduct the necessary information and gathering and discussions to help support these delegate negotiations that currently are taking place with respect to Nova Scotia. And as it relates to previous practices of previous governments, one cannot just point to certainly the Liberal government, but any government. It's been that position of government since Marshall, since Barrow, Conservative, Liberal, otherwise, that the negotiation without recognition is the default position.
Thank you, Chief Prosper. Do you have anything to add to that, Chief Gray, in regards?
I think it's an important question, right? Because whenever you're looking at the situation, I think education and understanding is one of the key aspects here. And if there's people that can come in, special representatives or other or different tables or discussions that can be set up to help educate and develop understanding, I think that's the key. It reminds me of a conversation I had a little over a year ago with representatives of DFO, and saying that for us to keep moving forward in our moderate livelihood fishery, it's important for education to be done, not just with our fishers, but with all fishers. And I think that's the key.
Thank you, Chief Gray. And I just in follow up to that, it seems like one of the continuous frustrations that have been expressed through this process is the lack of having all parties engaged in the process to this point, making sure that both Indigenous and non-Indigenous fish harvesters are incorporated in discussions and part of the process. Do you believe that perhaps before this appointment was made, that both consultations should have been held with Indigenous and non-Indigenous fish harvesters? Chief Prosper and then Chief Gray.
I believe, certainly discussion should have taken place with both respective parties, but I also, would like also to note that the Mi'kmaq are in a different position than other interested parties. For example, the industry. We have existing constitutional rights, which sets us apart from the commercial fishery or even the non-native fishers. So I don't agree with the concept of equating the status of these discussions, to Mi'kmaq people who have constitutional rights.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Gray?
Certainly, I would agree exactly with what Regional Chief Prosper is saying. Of course, I look at our local situation here, and we're not looking for any violence. We're not looking to make things worse in our area, and we would welcome discussion, but it needs to be clear that it can't be a veto type discussion. It needs to be developing understanding and education around the exercise of our rights.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Arnold.
You got 10 seconds.
Oh, my apologies.
That's your colleague's idea of sharing.
My apologies. Sorry.
Really quickly, yes or no answers. Has a moderate livelihood been defined since the Marshall decision, even in a partial way?
No, it hasn't.
No, and I think we tried to propose a solution, but we keep being repeatedly told no. That doesn't suit our regulations, our needs. It's too problematic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arnold, for that quick question. We got it in, but I did waive, Mr. Bragdon. And
my apologies, Chair.
Group,
I got lost in the answers and questions. My apologies to Mal as well.
There's no trouble to get consumed in the testimony. It's very intriguing, actually. We now go to Mr. Batiste for 6 minutes or less. And I understand you're sharing your time with Mr. Cormier. If you want, I'll wave at the halfway mark, and if you decide to share, you can share. If not, you can keep going, I guess. I don't have control of that. So when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could ask you, so I can be way more generous with my colleague than Mr. Bragdon was with his, can you just interrupt and say it's Mr. Cormier's turn to ask a question now? Because I know he has some questions for Chief Gray. But with that said, I would like to ask my question to Regional Chief Prosper. And I want to give you a chance to finish your speech. But I would also like to ask you told about the approaches that haven't worked over the past 20 years. I'd very much like to hear your solutions on any approaches that you believe that could work to implementing the Mi'kmaq right. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just further to what you mentioned of the approaches that don't work, and at a basic level, it's negotiation without recognition. That has been the legacy. It's endemic within any government to this point over the 21 years. In terms of moving forward and what could be an appropriate solution, it's important to consider that many in our communities can't relate to any position on our rights without any consultation as to what we know or believe. Government speaks much about consultation. However, their positions and actions reflect a reality where we have to fit within their rules. By not consulting or getting a proper mandate and not consulting in good faith within the consultation process, the government is making Mi'kmaq leadership look incompetent and not responsive to the needs of our communities. So what that begs is this notion of true reconciliation. True reconciliation means a reconciliation of laws, Mi'kmaq treaty law with Canadian law under the Fisheries Act. There is a need for both of these laws to work together to address the conflict that is taking place in our territory. There's no immediate, action in this area. The progress we have made over the years has been in jeopardy of being lost, and the cycle of direct action and litigation can return. So there is a takeaway here, and that is the legacy of Donald Marshall Jr. Donald Marshall Jr. died 9 years after his landmark decision. It provided a ray of hope, this decision, for many of our people, yet Donald Marshall did not even get a chance to see his decision fully realized within our Mi'kmaq communities. So even though I believe there is just cause to suggest an appropriate path forward, I can't help but plead to you and others and say, don't act on your own and come up with something that you think is good for us. It will never work. What exists in our communities is the product of the federal government's failed good intentions. If the legacy of Donald Marshall means anything, it means we have a right to live on this land. We have a right to live in accordance to the original instructions given to us by Gissel, the creator, which has been recognized and affirmed by the highest law and court in this country. Thank you.
And to you now, Mr. Cormier.
Hi, Chief Gray, thanks for being with us at this committee today. As my neighbor just across the bay, we're thinking about you during this difficult time. I know your community is facing some restriction coming to New Brunswick with COVID-19, but we're thinking about you and hope that this will be over soon. So just for our understanding for this committee, Mr. Gray, and for Canadians also, everyone in this industry seems to think like that we are in this situation because there's a lack of clarity by DFO or government, over the year that was lacking. So let's just imagine that if there was some successful negotiation, if I can say, and everyone's agree that the definition of a moderate livelihood, agree on the definition of a moderate livelihood, will you accept that? Will you accept it if the earnings of that moderate livelihood be restricted to commercial fishing season in different lobster zone in Atlantic Canada? I think you know what I'm saying, right? So I just want you to comment on that.
For us, if you look at how, and I'm sure you know the Restigouche River, if you're from just across the way, we've been managing the Restigouche River for the last 30 years, going back to 1995. We passed our own salmon law back then. And since then, we've been regulating our own salmon fishery. The fishery there is something that's very well managed. Conservation is of the utmost importance. And the season is determined according to our law. So we don't necessarily look at commercial season or food fishery season. And we don't look at our lobster as the same way either. Instead, we look at the stocks and how healthy they are. And that's kind of the way we've been approaching it with our management plan here. So the fish that we catch in the fall is a fishery that is normally licensed and recognized and under the allowable effort under DFO regulation. This is not outside of a fishing season, so to speak. The difference here is that we are looking to at the very least, recoup some costs and generate a bit of a moderate livelihood. Now we're nowhere close, but we did create some opportunity for our people through that. And I said, rather than looking at seasons, we're looking at the needs of our people. And that sometimes you need to eat the food and sometimes you need to sell it to make a livelihood.
Really quickly, can you talk about the collaboration between commercial fishers and fishers in your community, because we're close, like I said, to each other. So can we talk about the collaboration that you guys had during the last couple of years?
Sure. So everything has been peaceful on the water here. Everything's been good. We do participate in a number of fisheries. The lobster fishery, guys will help each other out during the commercial season. There's not a lot of issue there, and we've had no violence during our livelihood fishery in the fall the last 2 years. If you look at our snow crab fishery and other commercial operations, there's a lot of good collaboration there. We really work well with the people around us, and there's a lot of openness to do so.
Thank you for
Chair.
that. We now go to Madame Gill for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Chiefs Prosper and Gray for having accepted the committee's invitation. I'd like to ask a question, a very simple and complex question at the same time. From the outset, you've said that there's a consensus between the two of you saying that this has to be a nation-to-nation negotiation. So what would the key elements be to create winning conditions for these negotiations, negotiations that are beneficial and effective nation to nation?
Question, if I could begin. Getting to the point of nation to nation and the winning conditions to allow an environment like that to take place, what I would say is to just recognize the law of this land, and recognize the need to reconciliation that exists between laws that relate to treaties and Aboriginal peoples and the laws that exist within Canada. They can work together, but it takes a certain level of respect and maturity in order to get to that place.
If I could add to that, I think that's the key, is the flexibility on the other side. So far, when we talk about negotiations and reconciliation, it seems to be reconciling our expectations with Canadian law or Canadian policy, and trying to fit it into that mold rather than look at what's confirmed in the Constitution, what's confirmed in the treaties as our right, and how do we go out and exercise that, and then recognizing that we as Mi'kmaq people can define that for ourselves. And it doesn't have to compete with Canadian law. It can be in concert with, it can work well with those regulations, those policies, but we have to have that openness. And if it's not there, then we're going nowhere. I mean, we've spent 4.5 years going sideways.
Merci. Donc, essentiellement.
Thank you. So 2 points: the respect of legislation and reconciliation, and flexibility. Chief Prosper, at the beginning, you talked about moderate livelihood, and I believe, Chief Gray, you were also saying that there was a possibility, even though this issue is complex and we're talking about values here, but you said both that it would be possible to define moderate livelihood. That's at least what I understood. Can you give us some elements which would help us define what a moderate livelihood is? Because we need to know what that is. I know that spirituality is a value. Would that be part of the answer?
If I could begin, Chief Gray. As mentioned earlier, with respect to legal definitions related to moderate livelihood, I certainly believe that that's beyond the scope of this committee. In order to approach moderate livelihood, one has to examine and create a process where you actually have a mechanism that actually recognizes the Mi'kmaq Treaty right itself. And upon having that available, then that process can inform what a moderate livelihood is. And it might be something that exists on a community by community basis, a person by person basis. So that's what I would say in relation to that.
And that's been our experience as well, is that it is very much community. If you look at us in our practice, we work together with our neighbors, but how we go about fishing, what we view as key principles and values tend to align, but in the day-to-day how to do that, there are different practices. And it wouldn't be for us in Listuguj to tell Geskabegiak how to fish or what's important or how they define moderate livelihood. That's something they need to determine for themselves. We as Listuguj will determine for ourselves, and we can learn from each other, but that's really what it comes down to.
Est-ce que j'ai encore un peu de temps, monsieur?
Do I have any time left, Mr. Speaker? Or rather, Mr. Chairman? 1 minute. You talked about self-regulation, self-governance, creating rules that work for each community. And you also said that it's important to learn from others. So, do you believe that, or rather, if all of this would work, do you still think there would be conflicts that might be triggered by other stakeholders? So again, with regard to the self-governance of the fishery.
If I could just offer something in that regard, I think one cannot get rid completely of the potential for conflict. Essentially, what one can hopefully achieve is for government to do the right thing and to recognize that these rights exist. It's a matter of law. It's the law of the land, and to figure out a process and mechanism to implement those rights. And with that, I think First Nation communities can work together with our non-Native counterparts, in a manner that is respectful of each of these respective rights through the process of reconciliation.
Thank you, Madam Gill. That expires your time. We'll now go to Mr. Jans for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to be joining you from the unceded lands of the Huipachesset people. I want to thank both Chief Prosper and Chief Gray for their testimony. It's very important. We know right now that the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans is in talks with the Sipekne'katik people, and that she won't negotiate in public. She stated that on a number of occasions. We agree with that. But here we're sitting at this committee studying an ongoing issue that's important to those parties that are in nation-to-nation discussions. This is a question for Chief Prosper. You've stated some concerns about the committee studying this issue, these discussions that are taking place right now, and here we are at committee having these conversations. Do you have concerns about undermining those discussions, and what are the consequences of having this discussion at committee while DFO and the nation are talking in private?
Thank you for that. We're talking about a subject matter that involves constitutionally recognized rights that have been affirmed and recognized, and from the basis of treaty. And these are nation-to-nation, documents, and they appropriately need to be discussed at that level on a nation-to-nation basis. My worries about committee discussions or findings from a committee of this sort, especially if it gets into legal definitions, it can certainly undermine the nature of those discussions, which are more appropriately within the true representatives of government, the ministers, and the leaders of First Nations people. I mean, as I mentioned before, I think an appropriate subject matter for purposes of this committee is to provide an educational component, and I think that's further to what Chief Gray has mentioned as well.
I know, from my experience in my riding, where we have 10 Nuu-chah-nulth nations and the Qualicum Nation, that Indigenous fishers are regularly shut down in the name of conservation or the government, and we see the government spending millions of dollars fighting them in court. We even have judges at the Supreme Court level say that DFO has gone to the table knowingly with an empty mandate, truthfully showing up at the table. And we see that it's systemic racism. Do you believe that this committee should be studying systemic racism, and in what ways in what's happening in Nova Scotia reflective of a bigger issue happening with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans? And this is for you again, Chief Prosper.
I just harken back to my earlier example of even my community of Paktnkeh, upon which Donald Marshall was fishing off of our reserve lands here. And, and so we Buckingham didn't sign a Marshall Agreement. We didn't sign an AFS agreement. And the reason why we didn't sign those agreements because there was no mandate to discuss the right. What government essentially did was say, here's an agreement, we have no mandate, and there's no other option for you. So, this runs long, it runs deep, within many of our First Nation communities. And there's a distinct need to offer a different approach on this particular item because shame on Canada. Shame on Canada for not recognizing Sparrow. Double shame on Canada for not recognizing Marshall.
What would you like to see this committee recommend, this government do to make changes within the Department of Fisheries Oceans that go beyond symbolic measures of reconciliation?
What I'm thinking is the concept of reconciliation has to have some real substance. One cannot look at these rights reconciliation agreements that were recently put forward in 2007, which is essentially, here's some money, you're going to be under our rules. And by the way, your treaty rights are going to be on hold for 10 years. True reconciliation is recognized in Mi'kmaq law. We have a constitutional base, and that has to be reconciled with federal law within the Fisheries Act. It has to do more than just say, here's access. It has to provide an element of self-governance. What our people, what our fishers, what our community members are looking for is something that reflects the true nature of the treaty relationship that exists. Something different.
Thank you. Chief Gray, we know that this committee, we're going to hear repeatedly that Mi'kmaq fishers practicing their inherent right to fish as a threat to conservation and a threat to peace and civility. But we hear even Indigenous people being labeled as criminals and threats. In my mind, the real issue is being DFO's inability to protect the right to fish and adequately support negotiators trying to establish what a moderate livelihood is. What recommendation would you make to DFO to change its behavior and engage in good faith with not only with the Mi'kmaq, but with Indigenous fishers right across this country?
Forgot to unmute there. I was about to get going. So first off, I think it has to be meaningful work with the communities or the nations, however they're engaging with, and provide the support for true governance, that ensures the safety and sustainability of the fisheries. And in the end, they have to be willing to make a decision. In our experience, we negotiated for 2 years on a co-developed management plan for our treaty fishery. 2 years we worked on that. The night before we were about to put it in place, we were told, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That to me is unacceptable. That to me is part of the problem. If we're going to dance for 2 years and spend a lot of money, time, and effort trying to come up with a solution and be told no in the end, that's frustrating.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Gord. Now, of course, we could go to another round of questioning, but our time allotted for the committee function today is expired. But I will ask for the consensus of the committee, either by a show of hands or thumbs up or something, to extend the meeting. I'd like to go through another round of questioning if possible, and then go into the second panel, because we do have other witnesses waiting. So I see some thumbs up. 3, 4. Okay, Nancy, do you want to do an actual poll of the vote to extend?
No, actually.
If the resources are available for us to extend.
Yes, and I do see that Mr. Mazier here. I'm not sure if you can see him, but he was informing us that he wants to stay also.
Okay. So am I assuming we're staying? Because I didn't see a lot of thumbs up. I didn't see a lot of, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thumbs up. Okay, so I guess we're staying. So we'll get quickly to it. We'll go now to the second round of questioning, which would be 5 minutes to Mr. Calkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Prosper, since the Marshall decision, the federal government has spent upwards of about $600 million to buy up existing quota to transfer to First Nations communities with the goal of increasing their participation on fisheries and providing increased economic opportunity for their communities. It was my understanding that the programs which provided access for First Nations into the commercial fishery through quota, training, and equipment were done so with the intention of helping First Nations communities realize the rights reaffirmed in the Marshall decision. And through these programs, economic activity in the industry on reserve grew from about $3 million in 1999 to $152 million in 2016, according to certain, whoever you would believe on these statistics, including DFO. And I'm just wondering how do you view the quota and access created through programs like the Atlantic Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiative in relation to moderate livelihood fisheries?
Thank you. I think that access and that capacity did help our communities gain at least a preliminary entrance into the fishery. You know, they supported communities, they allowed communities to grow. I think it's also important to note that those agreements that were entered into were entered on a without prejudice basis. A without prejudice basis related to the rights of the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet people. So I think it's important to put that in context. And the other component that I would add related to that I believe in no way reflects a moderate livelihood. I mean, it was without prejudice, and most importantly, it was without an appropriate mandate. So there's a lot of unfinished business that has to take place with respect to additional sort of access that needs to be provided to the Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples. Thank you.
Chief Gray, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just echo what Chief Prosper is saying, in that yes, it did provide access, but it doesn't really address the moderate livelihood aspect here.
Okay, thank you. Last week we heard from a witness, Ms. Denny, that the term moderate livelihood is more of a concept to be able to, and I'm going to quote what she said, not to be pejorative in any way, but just because I'm trying to wrap my head around this. And she said, to support oneself spiritually, culturally, economically, and socially. Now, I foresee that being a very difficult standard to use as a baseline in fisheries management. So, Chief Gray, your nation has recently launched a moderate livelihood fishery based on your own management plan. And I guess I'm asking, does your management plan reflect what Ms. Denny said? And if so, how are you able to incorporate that into a quantifiable management plan that balances the realization of your rights and the sustainability of the resource, and specifically lobsters?
Okay, I'll start with the last part of that question first. On our website, listigwitch.ca, we do have a copy of our Listigwitch lobster law, and it does provide a bit of detail around that question and how we've gone about trying to develop a plan, a regulatory plan for our fishery. The other side of it is, even though this is a 2-week fishery that we do under our management plan and under the law, that would fall under this moderate livelihood. Going out on those boats with those fishermen, knowing that they have the backing, knowing that they are fishing under Mi'kmaq law, is truly empowering. It's an amazing feeling to see them out there, the families that support that, the people monitoring and making sure that things are done in a good way, the cooks that are taking the food and the lobster and preparing it for the families, the fishers being able to provide a little more for their family. I mean, it really does address a lot of what Miss Denny raised last week in her testimony. And if you haven't been out on one of those boats and you haven't seen how the fishermen go about it and the joy they get when they bring it to elders, it's hard to understand. But once you've been out there, it's obvious and evident.
No, I'm a hunter and a fisherman myself.
Yep.
Of course, I do so
Yep.
in a different manner. But so I understand all of those aspects of hunting and fishing and providing for oneself and all of the beauty of that heritage. But I'm just wondering more from a management perspective. how one can reconcile that. And I know that you've talked about how you have your management plan, and other nations have similar management plans, and then the Department of Fisheries and Oceans has their management plan. And I'm just wondering, how do you see that blend working together of management plans to ensure that everybody's rights are respected, and also at the same time ensure that the resource is viable well into the future?
Okay,
Thank you for.
I'm sorry, we're gone overboard or gone way past time of the 5-minute day. Perhaps for answering that question, if you could provide an answer in writing, the committee would accept that as part of the testimony from today. We now go to Mr. Batiste for 5 minutes or less, please.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Beach.
Just for the favor of all of our staff that are feverishly working in the background to rebook meetings that were scheduled over the extension, do you have a timeline on the second round and when you would expect us to complete by?
Well, we've got a little bit left in this, 10 minutes of questioning left to get through this full round, so every party gets a chance to ask questions. And then, of course, we have to suspend for a moment while we do some sound checks if they're not already done for the next set of guests. I'd like to get through the same amount of questioning for the next group as well, if we can, to make it worthwhile for the witnesses to have appeared either in person or by video conference. So I guess you're probably looking at an hour more or just in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So now, Mr. Batiste, to you for 5 minutes or less, please, of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've heard testimony that within the Mi'kmaq communities, there are shared values and language and principles, such as Netiglimp that was just previously raised. And while I understand that each Mi'kmaq community is distinct in its needs, I'm wondering if you feel that there are common values that Mi'kmaq share among communities and principles that would be agreeable in an overall sense of vision of establishing a moderate livelihood fisheries. Both chiefs.
Sure, if I can proceed with that. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Certainly, Mi'kmaq people do not exist in isolated communities. We share common tradition, common culture, common language, and embedded within the language, there are traditions like Netiglimp that provide a mechanism by which to guide management decisions and operations and things of that like. And it runs throughout the Mi'kmaq Nation. So it provides a certain level of reference and consistency for us to come together and make decisions, management decisions that are in the best interest of all our respective communities. It also itemizes a certain protocol that exists between our respective communities. So for example, when Donald Marshall came down here to Walneg to fish for eels, it was Chief Terry Paul of Membertou, the community where Donald Marshall was from, that actually phoned up my brother Kerry Prosper, who was the chief within Buckingham. So it allows for a certain level of diplomacy to exist as well between our respective nations. So I would add that.
Chief Darcy, would you like to add anything?
Certainly, and I think it goes back to the gathering we had a little over a year ago, Jaime, with the Grand Council here, and we talked about moose management, right, and the importance of taking care of that resource in Netiglimp, and some of the other things that came out there is that, you know, there has to be sort of a consensus-based approach that we can all agree with the way this is being done. That there's a giving back, there's mutual respect, as Regional Chief Prosper is speaking, and this sharing. It's not all about me and it's not all mine. You know, it needs to be shared, and there needs to be a giving back to the community. And I think that's an important aspect of the fishery and the way we're managing it.
Okay, so I'm hearing there is a common vision, common value, common language, and that it's all about sharing at the end of the day. And thank you, Chiefs, for that. Chief Prosper, with just the remaining time, I understand that before you were a chief, you were a lawyer. Can you give me your summarization of what both Marshall decisions said about the Mi'kmaq right to fish commercially for a moderate livelihood?
Sorry,
not sure
Chief
if you're.
Prosper, you're muted. You had done
What I mentioned was I'm struggling to be succinct on this one because obviously it provides a recognition for the Mi'kmaq community subject to the 1760 and 61 treaties to operate a fishery in accordance to their moderate livelihood, which is the final upshot. But more importantly, it provides a mechanism by which for us to govern how that right is undertaken. So as we know, there are Mi'kmaq rights, but underpinning those rights are the responsibilities, the treaty responsibilities that we are all obligated to undertake. So that is something that is embedded within the fabric of our nation, and it's something that I find is also recognized within that court decision as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No more questions for me.
Thank you, Mr. Batiste. We'll now go to Madame Gill for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for both witnesses. What I'm hearing from the start is that there have to be nation-to-nation negotiations. I have a question, though. In that case, what would the role of this committee be? Clearly, it's not the role of the committee to be part of the negotiations, but what do you think this committee should do apart from pressure the government to ensure there will be negotiations and a recognition of rights?
I can offer something in relation to that. I think a major role of this committee is to set the agenda for educating your counterparts within government, your constituents, that you represent, on the nature of what exists with respect to this treaty relationship and the history that has been undertaken with respect to our rights. That is a component, and I think it's also been mentioned by Chief Gray as well, that one cannot underestimate the true value of education and proper information going before people. Thank you.
I agree. I mean, it's. I think one of the important aspects here is it is providing voice to people. It is providing an opportunity for people to be heard and understanding to be developed and fostered, rather than the continued so finger pointing or name calling or violence that's happening. This is an alternative way to address the concerns that are going on. And I think it's an important aspect for us to be able to voice the concerns with some of the processes, some of the policies, and some of the approaches that DFO has been trying for a number of years that to us keep falling on deaf ears or falling short of expectations.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. Thank you again, both of you, for your important testimony. We often hear about how, Indigenous ideas around conservation are neglected, Indigenous knowledge by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, especially in relation to conservation. Maybe you can speak about, the importance of that changing and the importance of investing in capacity building within the nations and how you enforce your own management plans. Maybe Chief Gray, I know you have a ranger program, the Listagouche, and maybe you can speak about it.
Certainly. So, and this goes back to Mr. Culkin's question a little while ago. In our management plan, we have an effort that is authorized and recognized normally by DFO in our fall fishery. It's important for us that we stay within that effort because that's what the science says. That's what we view as important to the conservation of the resource. To help us in that, we do have, first off, our council is there to review the plan every year, the management plan. We have our conservation officers, if you will, the fish and wildlife monitors that are out there on the water, making sure that first off, our fishers are safe, and secondly, that they are doing the good things out there. We have dockside monitors that are there counting the lobster as they come off the boat, and ensuring that there is a sharing and a giving back to the community immediately. Then we have our cooks that are making sure that it's good quality lobster that being distributed. We have a number of people that get involved in this process. It's truly a tremendous effort, and for us, we did have one incident initially when we first launched this, and it was an internal situation where one of the fishers went out a day early. So a meeting was had with all of the fishers, and they said, "Well, how do we solve this?" And they said, "You need to give all of your catch to the community." The fisher said, "Okay, to keep the peace, to make things right, that I wronged all of you, I will give my entire catch to the community." So
Greatly appreciate that. Chief Prosper, did you want to add as well to that?
I think that's a beautiful summary, and I'll just harken back to what Chief Gray has mentioned, that when you have Mi'kmaq people out on the water exercising their right, there's a certain level of responsibility and accountability that exists, not only to other fishers, but to community, but also to the creator, Gisult and Sitkamu, our Earth Mother. There's a lot with that is hard to explain, but it's there when you see it within the eyes and faces of those fishers.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. And that ends our rounds of questioning for the first panel. I want to thank, of course, Chief Prosper and Chief Gray for taking part here this evening, even by video conference. Your testimony has been very informative and enlightening to some degree. I will now ask committee that we'll just suspend for a moment to allow our witness to leave and for the new witnesses to be added to the meeting. And before I do that, I want to recognize as well Ms. May from Saanich Gulf Islands has joined the committee as we take part in this study. Welcome. So we'll suspend for a moment to switch over. Can everyone click on their screen in the top right-hand corner and ensure that they are on gallery view? With this view, you should be able to see all the participants in a grid. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of our new witnesses. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. A reminder that all comments should be addressed to the chair. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in regular committee meetings. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either English, Floor, or French. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. I would now like to welcome our witnesses in this second panel. We have Michael Barron from the Cape Breton Fish Harvesters Association, and we have Mr. Ian McPherson and Bobby Jenkins from the Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association. We will now proceed to opening remarks. Mr. Barron, you can start off with 5 minutes or less when you're ready, sir.
Good evening. I would like to thank the Standing Committee for the invite to speak this evening. As mentioned, my name is Michael Barron. I am the president of the Cape Breton Fish Harvesters Association, and I am an independent owner, operator, commercial fisherman. I represent approximately 200 harvesters here in Cape Breton. I would like to start off by saying everyone has the right to fish safely and that my association does not condone violence. Harvester organizations throughout Atlantic Canada have supported and continue to support the Marshall decision. Associations like mine have spent considerable time and effort to try to provide education and explanations to individual members whose awareness and support varies greatly around the decision made in 1999. I will be honest, I myself am trying to understand the Marshall decision still. That is an issue with a living document, and what I mean by a living document is that without a clear definition to moderate livelihood, for the last 21 years, this has been open for much interpretation. This has caused hardship and uncertainty for all parties on both sides. Sadly, this process of educating and advising members is made ever more complicated by the lack of information and involvement in discussions about the moderate livelihood. The industry as a whole generates approximately $2 billion for the province of Nova Scotia. It employs approximately 50,000 people throughout the province. As an example of economic contributions, there are 249 harvesters located in the riding that MP Batiste resides over. These harvesters generate approximately $31 million in gross revenue. This is a significant contribution that must be recognized. Presently, the harvesters have had no discussions with their MP and feel discriminated against. On October 5th, the stakeholders of LFA 27 have wrote in a letter, registered mail to MPs, MLAs, and have received a response, but have not received a response from MP Batiste as of yet. All parties must be afforded an opportunity to discuss the respective concerns. The basis of the lobster fishery management is effort control, limited number of participants, limited amount of gear, defined season, maximum trap size, and most importantly, protecting egg-bearing females and the molting lobster. Lobster fishery was first to introduce a limited entry, an effort to stabilize employment within the industry and address the historical trend of increased participation during high production cycle, followed by disinvestment and withdrawal from the industry of those not solely dependent on it. Even with such limits, licenses, buyback programs in the 1970s and as recently as early 2000s were necessary to try and match participant numbers with the available resources. Apart from official rules and initiatives to manage participation, local pressures contribute to the relativity of an orderly distribution of effort across all LFAs. Commercial harvesters are quite logically and fearful that unknown amounts of additional or changed effort, especially if it is concentrated in a few areas, could seriously reduce catches in targeted areas while leaving others untouched. Big question is that if the government addresses rights and provides more access, where will that leave our small coastal communities? If more access is created, it will affect the economics of our coastal communities as the money that is generated from the fishery stays within the community. In some instances where Indigenous access is not adjacent to the coast, it will move money completely away from the coast, impacting our economies. Handling lobsters at this time of year post-molt and egg drop make them more vulnerable and easy to catch because they are trying to regain strength as their shells are still soft. After the eggs are dropped, and if caught this time of year, they are being caught as next year's lobster. That would leave commercial fleets catch rate lower, which brings less economic value back to our communities. According to the Canadian Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms, all Canadians are considered essential to preserving Canada as a free, democratic country. That being said, how does this apply to me as a Canadian commercial fisherman? The reason I ask this is because we need a common table to discuss the operational issues which have been long overdue. And for whatever reason, DFO has been remiss in not bringing both parties together to address this. Since October 2019, a coalition of fishing groups have been formally calling on DFO to put in place dialogue between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal fishers. And to this date, nothing has been put in place. This dialogue needs to happen to help the sustainable development of the fishery by maintaining the economic needs of the fishermen and sustainability of the species in concert with Indigenous rights. This leads to a question of equality across LFAs, the fishery in general, and society at large. All attention of late has been focused on the lobster fishery, peculiar to some extent.
Thank you, Mr. Barron. We've gone over time for the allowable amount of minutes for your opening statement. We do have a copy of your presentation, and we're going to have it translated, and committee members will be given a copy when that happens. But hopefully in the line of questioning, we'll get back to more of your testimony. I don't know who's speaking on behalf of the Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association. If it's Mr. McPherson, you can certainly go ahead now for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll be splitting the presentation, me and Mr. McPherson. Good evening, everyone. Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association would like to thank the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans for the opportunity to present during this challenging time for the harvesting sector in Eastern Canada. My name is Bobby Jenkins, and I am the president of the Prince Edward Island Fishermen's Association. The PEIFA represents 1,254 core harvesters in Prince Edward Island. The primary revenue species for our members is lobster. The lobster will be the focus of today's presentation. In the events of the past few weeks, there have been many discussions on what the primary issues are. We are here today to focus on the sustainability of the lobster stocks and why consistent enforcement of conservation measures is important. We currently find ourselves in a situation where, as commercial harvesters, we are not represented in important discussions that impact the resource that we all depend on for our livelihood. Perhaps today will be the start of an expanded dialogue regarding management issues concerning the resource. We understand that a significant contributing factor to the current situation in Atlantic Canada and Quebec has been the lack of clear definition regarding the term moderate livelihood. It also appears all sides of the fishery are concerned about the escalation of conflict. I would like to acknowledge that traditionally and non-traditional fishers have coexisted on Prince Edward Island for many years. That cooperative efforts such as opposing the Northern Pulp, Pipe in the Strait benefit all harvesters and PEI. Our intent today is to speak to our connection to the fishery and also to discuss our concerns. We will also share the mandate that we must follow as directed by our membership. We envision a moderate livelihood fishery that takes place within a regulated commercial fishing season. It is my hope that our discussion today can be respectful and constructive. We are in a very challenging time where leaders must lead with workable and beneficial solutions for our fisheries. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a question, Mr. Chair. Did you get our document today? We were kind of a late edition.
No, we haven't received it.
Oh, okay, that's too bad. Anyhow, in the respectful for time, what I'll do is I'll summarize that document, but there was 3 or 4 key points we wanted to make. That in the 1970s, some detailed data collection started. So we've got now over 50 years of data on the stocks and how the resource is performing. But in 2005, we had 2 areas that were in significant decline. So what those areas did, that they came up with their management plans under the Atlantic Lobster Sustainability Measures. And that also involved giving up traps permanently and borrowing large sums of money to drop traps. LFA 25 and LFA 26A dropped an astounding 29,050 traps during that period. And this is significant. So the questions from the committee is, why is history relevant to the situations of today? We have 10 points that we'd like to cover. One, the lobster fishery stocks are healthy in most areas because of a significant trap reduction and license reduction in many areas that have been carried out in the last decade. Two, regulated seasons have been established to preserve these stocks, and these season dates are supported by many years of scientific data. Three, fishing a carapace size above the minimum legal size has been a positive contributing factor to conservation measures across the lobster fishing areas. Four, international certifications and markets depend on a united and cohesive approach to the fishery in all areas, one that can be documented by third-party organizations. Five, traditional and non-traditional fishers have worked in the past and will continue to work together on PEI on these types of resource issues. In a cooperative effort, One Island Band sold 2 licenses in one area to purchase a license in another, be closer to territory and plant. These changes were unanimously supported by the PIFA, and recently a new set of talks have commenced between the PIFA and our First Nations fishery. 6, the overall management of the resource must be overseen by an overarching organization such as DFO. 7, the positive balance that currently exists in Atlantic Canada and Quebec lobster fishery is because of specific effort-based management measures. This balance will quickly define if too much fishing effort is put on the resource. 8, consistent enforcement of current conservation laws for all harvesters and purchasers is critical, so any illegal fishing can be stopped. 9, the concept of no new access being created in the fishery has proved to be a good one. The one in, one out principle of license purchases keeps access to the fishery consistent, documentable, and manageable. And finally, point 10, national polling suggests that it is of very high importance among Canadians for respecting and enforcing fishing regulations and having direct negotiations between government, Indigenous leaders, and fishing organizations. This concludes our presentation, and Captain Jenkins and I would be happy to address any questions the committee may have.
Thank you both. We'll now go to our first round of questioning for 6 minutes or less. Mr. Bragdon, I understand you're leading off and you're sharing your time again.
I'm actually going to relinquish my time to Mr. Arnold to return the favor from the last round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Not a problem. Mr. Arnold, when you're ready and when you're ready to share it with Mr. Calkins, you can do so. You're on mute, Mel. Your time is ticking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we'll sort this out sooner than later, I hope. I want to start out by asking both of the presenters now if their organizations have been consulted by the minister or her department for their input on how this is affecting the fishery and the businesses that you've created.
Certainly any consultation with the PIFA has been at a high level. We've been working with a number of other groups to get these ideas out on the table and discussions, but certainly a number of groups, including the PIFA, has been frustrated that we haven't had direct input into some of these ongoing situations.
So you haven't had direct discussions with the minister or her department?
We've been on some calls, and we've also submitted documents, but we haven't had any formal responses to any of those. Much the same as the list I gave Mr. Arnold.
Okay, Mr. Barron, do you have a comment?
Our association, Cape Breton Fish Harvesters, have not received any direct correspondence with the fishery minister. She has not responded to the letter that we have sent through the state on behalf of the stakeholders, and there has been just a little consultation with other members of the Coalition of Fishing Associations, and I've received that information from the other groups. That's all the dealings we've had with the fisheries minister.
Okay, thank you. In some of the earlier testimony last week, we heard that part of what's taking place here is that we have the government-to-government negotiations taking place with government to First Nations or the Indigenous community. What communication methods would you suggest between the the non-First Nation fishers and DFO and the non-First Nation fishers and First Nations to negotiate the implementation of these treaty rates?
Well, in our local situation, the chiefs have agreed to go back to their members and discuss what they feel a moderate livelihood definition would look like, or fishery would look like, and will be reconvening. So we see that as a positive step. Certainly, the resource is so important to everyone that we need to have three-party dialogue. And obviously, we've heard from other witnesses. There's a lot of frustration with DFO, but perhaps an independent facilitator would make those talks productive. But definitely, there has to be discussions with the non-traditional, the traditional, and DFO is in a three-way conversation.
Okay, thank you. I want to move on to another question here. Looking at the 2000 report from the Fisheries Committee on the Marshall decision of Marshall II, the committee recommended that any transfer of access to fisheries resources to First Nations communities be accomplished through a federal government-funded voluntary buyback of a portion of the existing commercial licenses as they become available. We've seen that some of that has taken place, but the government's response to this was that the government recognizes that most fisheries are fully subscribed and that increased Aboriginal participation in the fishery can only occur without serious disruption to existing fisheries through the retirement of existing capacity. That was 20 years ago. Has fishing intensified? Has it become more efficient, and has the demand on the resource increased in that 20 years?
Thank you for the question. I would say that the demand on the fishery is stronger now than it was 20 years ago. I would also like to mention that Mr. McPherson in the presentation, when we went under ASLM to buy up existing licenses and do trap reduction. Part of the reason we did that was sustainability of the resource. And at the time, the resource was not in that good a shape, and that's not that long ago. We started ASLM in 2009. It's since we see it rebounding now, but the pressure on the demand on the stock today is probably more than it was in 2000. And the technology is definitely better to catch them.
Thank you. Mr. Barron, do you have a comment on that?
Well, no, actually, I'm in agreement with what my counterparts in PEI are saying. Like, the effort has increased, but that effort has increased through the stock over the years being built up by the conservation that the commercial fleet has done over the years through escape mechanisms and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask either of you or any of you, how should DFO implement the Micmac Treaty fishing rates in support of a moderately livelihood while also providing for certainty and predictability regarding access to the aquatic resources for all fishers?
Thank you for that question. We listened to witnesses this evening. We met with Chief Bernard and Chief Gould from Lennox Island and Abigail on PEI on October 2nd. And to my knowledge, sir, nobody's given us a definition of moderate livelihood yet. And I certainly haven't heard a definition of moderate livelihood here this evening. So it's kind of a loaded question. We don't know what moderate livelihood consists of at this point. I certainly could probably go into a room with 20 people and maybe we could hammer something out on what we think moderate livelihood would be. But would that be appropriate to the rights holders? Probably not.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, oh, sorry.
Okay, if you could quickly.
I just wanted to quickly add that, and it's unfortunate, we were a late edition today, so you didn't get a chance to get our document, but the 10 points that we've outlined were meant to be a discussion base to get kind of a dialogue going, but we're not part of the dialogue now.
Okay, thank you for that. And anything that was submitted, once when we receive it, get it translated, it'll be distributed to committee members. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. That is the full 6 minutes. didn't know you weren't going to share, but anyway, you used it regardless. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine are going to be short to the point. Whoever wants to answer, can fishing out of existing seasons be more lucrative?
I don't mind answering that one, and thank you for the question. Depending on the definition of fishing out of a regulated season, and depending on the amount of traps, it could be more lucrative depending on where you go and what your competition is like. If your competition is down and you have, say, 50 to 100 traps, you could probably build that trap to its maximum size, haul that trap. If you had 50, say it was 50, you could haul them traps probably 4, 5, 6 times a day. Competition is not there. You're fishing basically with no competition, and yeah, it could be more lucrative. Yes, it could, depending on how you look at the situation, but it could be just as good as the way it is with regulated seasons, say 55 days, and a 300 trap model or a 272 trap model or whatever.
So fishing with very little competition means more trapping per trap. You can capture more. Am I correct in that?
Yes,
Mr. Barron?
Yes, you are correct. Yeah, so
go ahead.
No.
It's fine. Okay. My question just for clarification to the committee, LFA 25, which is shared between New Brunswick and PI, in 2004, that total fishery on both sides of the strait was in collapse, nearly ruined. Anybody participating in it could not even pay their fuel cost, let alone anything else. And significant steps were made to restore that fishery to a very strong one today, which included removing significant number of licenses, therefore the traps, and including the carpet size. Was that those two measures what brought that fishery back to where it is quite successful today?
Absolutely did. It was a bitter pill to swallow for some of the harvesters in Area 25 at the time. You're absolutely correct. Nobody made any money there for a couple of years, or very little money after taxes and stuff. They probably didn't make any. But the measures that were put in place on behalf of the fishermen in that area, and we're talking escape vents, carpet size, releasing of bigger females, a lot of that stuff played a part in where the stock is today. But it was on a downhill slide there for a few years, and fishermen with bit the bullet and did a lot of management stuff to bring it back to the kind of fishery it is today.
Thank you. And this question can go to either one, and I want to keep it in context because we had two wonderful presentations briefed from Chief Prosper and Chief Gray, and referenced numerous times that First Nations people, particularly Mi'kmaq, enjoy being out on the water, exercising their right, participating in the fishery. And what's expressed to me from time to time, and then there also was a reference that we need access to the moderate fishery because of the high unemployment rate in some of the First Nation communities. There is, and it's been raised with me a number of times, of a practice and comment because I want to hear from both sides on the practice that non-First Nation people are fishing these rights and not the First Nation people in every situation. Could you comment? Mr. Barron?
Sorry, I pushed the wrong button, but anyhow, I guess I would allude to the recent McDonald-Laurier report that profiled some of the First Nations communities that were fishing their licenses. Proceeds from those licenses were going back into the community, and there were some real success stories. So to me, that was some pretty statistical and documentable cases of communities benefiting if they were fishing their own license.
but you didn't comment on the practice of, is it happening where non-First Nation people are fishing under the rights of First Nations?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, it's happening in certain harbors where non-Indigenous fishermen are helping Indigenous fishermen do the capture. I'm not involved in it myself. I don't know people that are, but I know it is going on. Maybe our counterpart in Cape Breton knows more about it from that side of from over there.
Okay, Mr. Barron, maybe you could respond.
Are you talking
Mr. Barron?
about, yeah, are you talking about leasing out of the licenses and non-Aboriginal fishing them? Is that
Yes.
what you're alluding to?
Yes.
Yes, there is instances of that. There's none here in my LFA that I'm aware of, but there are some throughout. Sorry, there are some in my LFA, but there are some that's not happening in my direct area where I fish. But it is a
Okay,
practice
thank you,
that's
Chair.
going on through Nova Scotia.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
thanks.
Morrissey. We'll now go to Madam Gill for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I have a question about the negotiations. As you heard, Chief Prosper and Chief Gray were here a little earlier, and they said we need nation-to-nation negotiations, so between First Nations and the Government of Canada. Some fishers are asking to be heard as well. So, how do you think non-native fishermen should be heard? What I understand is that the Department of Fisheries does not represent non-Aboriginal fishermen. So how can their voices become part of the conversation? Any of you can answer.
One of the ideas that's been put out there for some time now is that there would be a liaison between non-Aboriginal fishing organizations and the negotiation table, and dealing with these kinds of issues and making our concerns known. And it would have to be obviously a person of trust, but at the end of the day, there are ways to work around this. We do understand the nation to nation, but I think if people can understand that when there's 10,000 harvesters and one individual negotiating on our behalf, and the response being that we can't tell you what's going on because it's nation to nation, that this has led to a lot of frustration and unfortunately some of the situation that's out there now.
Je sais pas, Monsieur Barron, si vous voulez.
Mr. Barron, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, we're just asking DFO to help facilitate, and by facilitate, where they're getting this outside party to help direct the conversation. You can get more people from the industry and First Nations at the table so we can start the discussion.
Et quand vous parlez de négociation,
And when you talk about negotiations, well, there's nation to nation, and there are rights involved. How do you perceive the work? How should these negotiations be structured? There was talk of harvesters to harvesters negotiating. Did I hear you correctly?
no.
We need
Ok, c'est
we
bon.
need First Nations and harvesters and government in the same room having the conversation. Not government and harvesters, not government and First Nations. All three parties have to be sitting around the table for the discussion.
I think one of the key issues we're dealing with right now is that we've been told by DFO that no new access would be created, which would typically be more new licenses being generated or some other method. And so that's an issue, but I think I'm not so sure that negotiation is the right word. There needs to be open and honest dialogue about the resource and the sustainability of the resource. And if certain decisions are made or ideas are on the table, how they would impact the resource from a sustainability standpoint. That needs to be the focus. Thank you.
J'aurais une autre question concernant.
I have another question about the different types of indigenous fisheries in the last few years. First Nations want to get into commercial fishing. There's also community fishing. So how do you perceive these two types of fisheries versus fishing for a moderate livelihood? Do you think that these two other types of fisheries should be part of the discussion? Are those things different from fishing for a moderate livelihood?
Again, I think go back to the discussion around potential impact on the resource. I think a good way to look at it is what are the cumulative effects or impacts or potential impacts on the resource, and we need to look at it through that lens and have all harvesters involved in that kind of dialogue and discussing those, because if the resource was to drop off significantly, everyone's fishery would be impacted in a negative way, and that would be a lose-lose situation.
You broke up on your question. Could you repeat the question?
Oui, bien sûr, rapidement.
Yes, of course. Briefly, how do you perceive the fact that on the one hand, we're talking about a moderate livelihood, but on the other hand, there's commercial and communal fisheries. First Nations believe these two other fisheries are also important. Do you believe they are different, or do they complement the subsistence fishing?
Well, like they said, like if too much access is granted through communal and fishing and the commercial, and the stocks start to be depleted somewhat, it's going to affect the overall fishery. So
Okay, thank you, Madame Gill. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your testimony, especially on such short notice. Mr. Barron and Mr. Jenkins, first, I want to thank you for joining everyone in condemning the violence that's taking place against Mi'kmaq fishers. Can you speak about the measures that your organization, both of your organizations, have adopted to hold fishers within your organizations accountable when they practice violence or attempt to take conservation into their own hands? And maybe you can cite out what would happen within your organizations if a fisher or harvester is known to be violating DFO's conservation regulations and trying to take that into their own hands.
Thank you for the very important question. I just recently signed impact statements for the courts on PEI for violators that were charged with fishery offenses on PEI. Our board of directors some time ago passed a motion at a board of directors meeting that we would sign a victim impact statement. Whoever the president of the Prince Edward Island is at the time will sign a victim impact statement regardless of the offense. We have been doing that for the past 10 years. We will continue to do that. I have volunteered personally to read victim impact statements in court if need be. I haven't been asked to do that as of yet, but I have agreed to do that if they want me to do that. So we practice for conservation on PEI, I think, from our board of directors and our advisory committees, is it doesn't matter who gets caught. It doesn't matter what the offense is. Everybody's treated the same. Victim impact statement will go out on behalf of the PIFA. In regards to our Aboriginal chiefs on PI. The PIFA took the initiative on October 2nd to meet with our chiefs and from Lennox, our Chief Jeremy Menard from Lennox Island and Chief Junior Gold from Abeguet. And we had a pretty productive meeting on October 2nd regarding the situation in Atlantic Canada. And we are looking forward for more dialogue with the chiefs there.
Okay, maybe just to give you an example, if you had a fish harvester in your organization that was caught burning a lobster pound down, cutting traps in the name of conservation, destroying lobster, what would you do?
We would, we're not going to condone anything like that.
But is there any consequences in your organization?
That would be up to the law
Okay.
to charge that individual.
So your organizations don't have any
and whatever port it happened at, I would expect that under the Harbor Authority representatives and the board of that respective Harbor Authority, there could be something done along those lines. We would allow law enforcement to. We can't personally charge anybody.
Mr. Barron, do you have any additional comments?
Our association doesn't have any bylaws in place to enforce anything like that, and nor have we came across anything like that. So it may be something that would come up for discussion, but to ask an association if they are going to enforce some type of law that's been broken on the water, that's DFO's enforcement position. That
Say
onus
DFO
shouldn't.
convicts somebody. Say if DFO convicts somebody, how would your organization respond to a member that was convicted?
That would have to be something that would go to discussion amongst the board.
You know, I really appreciate you talking about how fisheries can be managed jointly, and you know, we believe, and it's that it should be nation to nation dialogue in terms of how fisheries should move forward. And where I live in the Nuu-Chah-Nulth territories, that the commercial fishers, the recreation fishers understand that it is the minister representing commercial at the negotiating table, negotiating nation to nation dialogue on quota, on establishing fishing rights. But they also have a management table in our region called West Coast Aquatic Management. It's a really great model where everybody is sitting at the table talking about their management plans, including the nations with their management plans. And it's everyone's excited about it. They say was working tremendously, but the department basically, you know, stepped away from the table. They've been almost invisible. They stopped resourcing the table over the last decade. Can you cite any examples in your region where there was things that were working and the department stepped back and they stopped supporting those discussions? Go ahead, Mr. Barron. Maybe I'll start with you then again.
Well, there's nothing that I can think of right off the top of my head, but just a little bit of dealings that I've had, like up until this situation, like DFO here in our local area has been fairly good to work with the industry. And since this stuff happened in October up until now, they've kind of ceased all communication, and from federal and local, right? So
do you see systemic racism in the department? Can you think of examples of it?
Not that I can say.
What about you, Mr. McPherson and Mr. Jenkins? Can you comment on that?
Well, I think the frustration from our side has been that we've been dialoguing with some senior people in Ottawa with our concerns of the situation. Just because it was in Southwest Nova, it was a great concern to everyone else. And one of the things that we were seeking was dialogue, and asked DFO to facilitate that. Now, our local manager did help in our most recent meeting. I'm glad we had it when we did, but that dialogue needs to happen in a lot of places, and that's a role that DFO can fulfill. And for some reason, there seems to be a reluctance.
And what Mr. Johns, your time has gone well past. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but my time is actually moving over to Mr. Mazur.
Okay, Mr. Mazur, when you're ready, clock is ticking.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
5 minutes or less.
You can hear me okay? Okay. Just to sort of follow up on Mr. John's questioning. I guess DFO, you've been basically asking everyone, any agency that would talk to you, questions of please come and help us get to the table and help coordinate these conversations, not only amongst harvesters but in communities. And I guess I want to follow up on Mr. Barron's comments about how you called for a coalition to start, and there was absolutely, just so to be clear, there was no dialogue. DFO, the minister's department, no one actually followed up with you and thought, yeah, this is a good idea. Maybe we should start conversation like this.
I didn't say that there was no coalition. I said there is a coalition of fishing associations that have been working together since October of 2019, and we're trying to get the minister to come to the table with us as an industry.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, that's the way I understood it. Sorry. That's right. Okay. And do you think if those conversations would have started back in 2019, do you think that the incidents would have happened here recently would have happened, or would they, since dialogue had already started, do you think that would have helped getting people to the table and using it as an example?
I definitely think that things wouldn't have escalated to the manner they have now if conversations had started. Mm-hmm. This falls solely on the lack of guidance or governance, I guess, from DFO.
Have you heard anything from either DFO of why they didn't want to interact, like why they either stepped back or why they weren't engaging with that? Was this something new to them? And maybe either one of you can answer that. Like, is there anything else? Did anybody else in the East Coast take this kind of approach?
If I could speak to that, the mandate that we were told was they were nation-to-nation negotiations. We were not considered a stakeholder, and so wouldn't be involved in any of those talks. And although we were told for a number of months that DFO would try to facilitate some dialogue with various First Nations in Atlantic Canada, Quebec, that just didn't happen.
Okay. So we'll shift gears a little bit here. Now, talking about resources, I know all of you, I'm a farmer as well, but on the prairies, but you're always looking after your resources, trying to protect them so you got next year's crop. If the stocks, like I don't know, do you have any reports of how those stocks are doing right now, even with the fishing that's going on right now? Is it sustainable? Or if it were to drop down, so all of a sudden you notice that we're in a crisis, how long would it take to bring those stocks back? Or what would have to be done, I guess, to get those stocks back?
Well, that's a good question, and thanks for asking it. That depends on how bad the stock actually got. If we've seen a decrease of 20-25%, we would have to look at some kind of a new conservation measure. When we did the buyback and when we started doing the buyback and the reduction of traps in 2009, 2010, in some areas, like Mr. McPherson mentioned earlier, some of our LFAs were suffering 20-25% reduction of catches. So we took the initiative then and started putting in new conservation measures. So it depends on what kind of shape the stock was actually in and how far it fell. So we'd have to base it on that and base it on whatever science is available at the time.
To add a little bit to Mr. Jenkins there, the thing is with the fishing that's going on right now, depending on how that resource is handled or managed, we're not going to see the immediate effects because the way the lobsters are, it takes 7 to 9 years to reach the catchable, marketable size. So if there's anything truly being detrimental done now, we're not going to see the effects until further down the road. There may be some short-term effects, but it's going to take a lot longer to see the effects of what's happening right now.
Wow, 7 to 9 years.
Yeah, that's what it takes for a lobster to reach the size to make.
So is there any agency? Is the department?
Thank you, Mr. Mazier. 5 minutes don't be long going when you're having fun.
Thank you.
We'll now go to Mr. Batiste for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the witnesses for their testimony. And I'd just like to ask Mr. Barron just to forward me the correspondence. The last correspondence I got from the president was the Cape Breton Fish Harvesters Association. I've received no such correspondence in the past few weeks. But I want to talk to you a little bit about hearing from the fishing associations. One of the things I've been hearing quite a bit is that the biggest concerns of the fisheries associations are making sure that this long-term sustainability of the lobster industry and all of the different industries, and that there is a need for transparency. Would you say that those are the top two concerns of the fishing associations? And if there's a third, would you be able to elaborate on what I've missed?
I will have no problem having our staff forward you that correspondence again. And as for the transparency and the resource, they are of the utmost importance of any fisherman association. And I will have it be known that Chief Terry has reached out. He's been quite busy, and with the election and stuff, he's going to look to have a sit down with the associations here in Cape Breton, and I'm extremely looking forward to having those discussions. So as for a third point, I can't really say right now, but transparency and protecting the resource is of the utmost importance.
Okay. So if there was a way in which, there was a proposed way in which all of the Mi'kmaq fisheries, not just the moderate livelihood, but also the food and ceremonial, and if all of that was transparent, and scientists were saying that, because of the small level of this, less than 1%, that there wouldn't be a damage to the overall industry, would it be something that you'd be able to support?
At this time, I really can't answer that question without actually seeing any facts in front of me, scientific facts. Okay.
So I've heard that from both witnesses, and I feel free to answer this, that they've stated they wanted that the Fisheries Association have always said that they want a seat at the table. We've heard from the Mi'kmaq that because they have a constitutional right, that they don't feel that's appropriate legally. I'm wondering, if you had a spot at the table, what would the main argument be, or the crux of the argument be to government? What would you say on behalf of the fishermen's associations that we need to consider in moving forward on a moderate livelihood study?
Again, until negotiations or discussions actually start, I really don't have a lot to add to that, because those discussions have to be had. We have to be put in a room together so those discussions can happen, and we can see what each party involved actually has in mind.
Okay.
We would echo that response, and I think it's just human nature. Without information, people always assume the worst. And so I think that's part of the challenge we're all going through now.
So would you say the fact that Siboneyagattee has a management plan and the Budladeck First Nations has a management plan, the fact that those management plans haven't been sent to the Fisheries Associations, is that one of the biggest obstacles in terms of to getting Fisheries Association support on these mandates that the Mi'kmaq have?
Certainly, we think that would be a positive step. We'd have no idea what's in those plans. And as I mentioned earlier, when you're consistently running up to, we can't share this, we can't mention that, and we get that to a degree, but that caused some of the angst for sure.
How about you, Mr. Barron? Would you say that if you had those plans in front of you and they met both the transparency and sustainability thing, that it would be possible to get that support?
Again, it'd be hard to say you could render that support without actually seeing the document, and then it would have to be put in front of all the associations for the associations to see.
All right, last question. Do you think that having the Fishermen's Association giving their testimony to these committees is a good start in terms of hearing from the fishermen themselves?
We would say absolutely. Dialogue is always good, for sure. And we're talking about, I guess one last thing is we're talking about livelihoods, everyone's livelihoods, and those are pretty important things.
Absolutely. Would you echo those comments, Mr. Barron?
Yes, I would echo those comments.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Batiste. Right on the mark of 5 minutes, buddy. That was pretty good. First one yet this evening. We'll now go to Madam Gill for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some committee witnesses have said that one of the committee's roles could be that of education or raising awareness to deconstruct certain perceptions in order to reach a better collaboration. What do you think of that? As well, what are your expectations, generally speaking, with regard to your appearance at this committee?
I'm sorry, could I have the question repeated? I missed the first part of it.
Oui, si on...
Sure, as long as you don't lose any of your time. I said that some witnesses before the committee had said that one of the roles of this committee was one of education, just to work towards better collaboration amongst the stakeholders. So what do you think of that as well? Do you think there are other roles this committee could play? And what are your expectations of this committee and your testimony before the committee?
Well, I guess our expectation would be something that comes out of this, that the Fisheries Committee is a vital committee, that it follows up, that actions are being spoken to or committed to are followed up, because this is a lot of the frustration of the groups from the past year that we seem to have spun our wheels, and that it's led to significant problems in the industry.
And Monsieur Barron?
Okay. Yes. No. What I feel the role of the committee would be to, yes, increase this dialogue through the department, and again with First Nations, because the dialogue has to be started. So hopefully that's by having this committee that we will start the discussions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Barron. Thank you, Madam Gill. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Right, thank you. Maybe a question for both of your organizations. Do you have any goals when it comes to reconciliation? Do you have any, plans around community engagement or learning and listening plans when it comes to the Indigenous communities whose lands you're on? And, I'll just give you in comparison, unions often have strong targets to educate their members around support for Indigenous workers within their memberships. Can you speak from your organization's lens what you're doing?
Again, as I mentioned there a few moments ago, we're looking to have the discussions with Chief Terry and looking forward to what his views are on this. And once we understand the views that they have, then we can address it to our membership.
Mr. McPherson and Mr. Jenkins, do you want to comment on that as well?
Just one quick thing, Sir Johns, from your last round there, that we ran out of time. We do have, members have to be in good standing with the association, and the board would deal with something if that you alluded to earlier.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that being said, we've reached out and we want to continue to do that dialogue. And one thing that Chief Bernard said was that she said the real education process really needs to happen for everybody to understand treaties and how they work and rights and all those things. And I can tell you, we had all our lobster advisories represented. Our executive was there, and it was fruitful. And we're looking forward to the next meeting, and that's how it starts.
Just back to an earlier question around systemic racism in the DFO. I mean, we saw a lobster pound get burned. We saw intimidation, assaults, traps getting cut, lobster getting destroyed. And we saw the slow reaction of the RCMP to create peace and to create safety. Do you not see systemic racism in the way that this was approached in terms of protecting the Mi'kmaq fishers and their community?
Thank you for the question. That's a hard question to answer. I'm not sure. We're still not 100% sure of what led to the events down there. We didn't condone a lobster plant being burnt or a van or a truck being burnt or anything like that. Again, I will respectfully say on behalf of the RCMP, that's their jurisdiction, not ours. If charges should have been laid, then they should have been laid, and it's up to them to lay them.
Mr. Barron?
All we can speak on is behalf of our membership.
Mr. Barron, do you have a comment on that?
I don't see what you're speaking to in our membership on the racism.
I'm just asking if you see any, systemic racism that you believe is there, just in terms of the response.
To speak to the slow response from the RCMP, well, the slow response was due to the fact that DFO wouldn't go to the so-called plants and that were involved in buying some of these moderate livelihood lobsters, and that led to the slow response from the RCMP, and the delayed response from DFO over time with all this led to the frustrations. But to outright say that I see systemic racism, no, I can't say that I do. That's too hard of a question to ask, not being involved firsthand down there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johns. That concludes our testimony from our witnesses this evening. I want to thank, of course, Mr. Barron, Mr. McPherson, and Mr. Jenkins for appearing in our second hour or a little better for this evening's committee meeting. So the guests can sign off. But before we adjourn this meeting, I want to remind members that deadline for final witnesses and this study is 5 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. Please send them to the clerk via email before that deadline. I want to, of course, thank Nancy and the table staff for staying late this evening for us to hear this testimony, and as well to our own staff for the various MPs. I'm sure some of them are working late too because of the extension, but we have to try and get in as much testimony as we can so as we can produce a very noteworthy and worthwhile report at the end of the study. So again, thank you everybody, and we'll see you, I guess, on Monday, Thursday. Take care.
Thursday?
Thursday.
Thank you.